graphing quadratic functions from start to finish. These are the steps over on the left that we're going to do, and I'll zoom in on them as we go so it makes it easier to see. Then we're going to put them on our graph. So the first thing that you have to do is identify which numbers are a, b, and c. Remember that a is always the number in front of x squared. So in this case, we don't have a number showing, which makes it a 1. B is always the number that's with the x. Since we have a minus 2x, our b will be negative 2. C is always the number that doesn't have a variable with it. In this case, we're having negative 3 as our c squared because it says minus 3 in our equation. The next thing we do is find and graph the axis of symmetry. So we use the formula x equals the opposite of b over 2a. In this case, our b is negative 2. So we are going to do x equals the opposite of negative 2 over 2 times a. And a, we decided, was 1. So the opposite of negative 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So our axis of symmetry is at x equals 1. So on our graph, we're going to put a line at x equals 1. Now we make it a dashed line because it's technically not part of our graph. It is representing the place, the middle of the u, or the middle of the parabola. So we should be able to fold it in half on that dotted line, and both sides should be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and label this as my axis of symmetry. You do not have to do that on every graph. I am only doing this so later we can look back and see which parts of the graph went to what. So maybe this could be your reference point for when you have to do these problems on your own. The next thing after you find the axis of symmetry is finding the vertex. To do that, you take what you found for your axis of symmetry, or x equals 1, and we plug that into our original equation. So instead of doing y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3, we're going to put a 1 in for all of those x's. So we'll do y equals 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 3. Order of operations says I need to do exponents first. 1 squared is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And then I just bring down my minus 3. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. So our vertex is going to be at the point of negative 4. But the first coordinate, or the x that we'll use, is the 1 that we found earlier. Now that 1 was our axis of symmetry. So when we go over here to graph it, we've already got a line on the positive 1. So we're going over 1 and down 4. Your vertex should always be on your axis of symmetry. That's going to be the point that's either at the top of the u or the parabola or at the bottom of the parabola. In this case, our a is positive. That means that the u is going to open up. So our vertex, or our point here, will be at the bottom of the u, or that will be the minimum point on the graph. After you find the vertex, the next step is to plot and reflect the y-intercept. In the equation, our original equation, the c always stands for the y-intercept. In our case, the c was the negative 3. So on the graph, we're going to come back to the graph, and we will plot on the y-axis our y-intercept of negative 3. Then we're going to reflect that across the axis of symmetry. So we've got our dotted line. Remember I said that's where you could fold it in half? If you did, the red dot would end up over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and label this y-intercept, or the c. And then this dot is just the reflection of the y-intercept. So after you get that done, we go back to our other page to see what our next step is. The next thing is the last part actually is to find and plot the x-intercepts. To do that, you use the quadratic formula. which is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we just plug our different letters in for the variables that they represent. So we're going to do the opposite of negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times a, which was 1, times c, which was negative 3. All that over 2 times 1, which was our a. The first part you want to work out is the discriminant. That is the stuff underneath the square root sign. This is going to tell us how many x-intercepts we get when we're finished. So in the discriminant, I have negative 2 squared, that's 4. And then I'm going to do this part. 4 times 1 times negative 3 is negative 12. So 4 minus negative 12 is a positive 16. So 16 is what's going to go in place of the highlighted green things underneath the square root sign. So we're just scooting that up a little bit so I can have some more space. So now we're going to do our next steps. The opposite of negative 2 is 2. And then we have plus or minus the square root of 16 all over. 2 times 1 is 2. Next we do square root of 16, which is 4. So we have 2 plus or minus, sorry about that, 2 plus or minus 4 all over 2. To figure out our x-intercepts, we have to break this apart. So this plus or minus right here just means we're going to do two different equations. One of them will be 2 plus 4 divided by 2. The other one will be 2 minus 4 divided by 2. So we just simplify. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Over here, 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So our x-intercepts are going to be 3 and negative 1. So when we go to the graph, this is our x-axis, so we're going to put dots at 3 and at negative 1. Then the last thing we have left to do is just connect the dots, so to speak, on our parabola. So we know that we're not going to make straight lines. We're going to make, instead, a U shape, the best we can. So this is our parabola.